At the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024, a wave of homicide shocked the nation and traumatized Vieux-Fort. During the summer of 2024, the homicide rate peaked at about 2 per week. St. Lucia was reeling from its effects, but St. Lucia is not the only one.
There seems to be a pandemic of crime in the region. And this is not, that wasn't meant to be an excuse. It's a fact. The entire region seems to be plagued with that pandemic of violence, particularly gang violence and particularly violence among young men.
The Prime Minister had just returned from a regional crime symposium in Guyana. On the same Monday morning that the Prime Minister made his statement, Assistant the Regional Director of CARICOM'S IMPACS visited St. Lucia for a special training session in the destruction of weapons, and he had a special message about the effect violence has, the numbing effect.
So all of us have become normalized to crime, unfortunately. So we need to denormalize violence. The unfortunate reality is that gun violence is increasingly normalized in many countries in the Caribbean. We need to address the demand side of gun violence and the causation factors.
The cultural violence has many entry points into Caribbean life, from pornographically violent lyrics in some dancehall and hip-hop songs, to film and television, to the now ubiquitous video games. At the Crime Symposium in Guyana, one research paper made a link between the impact of music and the economic cost of violence.
In fact, there were many discussions as far as this is concerned. One of it was the influence of music. There was a paper on whether music influences the type of music, whether it influences that kind of behavior. This is work in progress. There was also the impact of violence on the health services. And again, something that we suffer from in St. Lucia. The violence, the stabbings and the woundings, how does that impact on the health services? There was an estimate in one country that $22 million has been spent in the health services to deal with violence as it relates to stabbings and wounding. And this is one of the major problems we have here in St. Lucia in our emergency services.
It is impossible to stop the music, the movies, and the games. But Calixtus Joseph thinks that these are not impassable obstacles when it comes to curbing crime.
Criminality can be reduced significantly. Crime can be prevented and reduced significantly. Studies around the world have shown that crime can be reduced, whether it's in a community, whether it's in a country, whether it's a region. So crime can be reduced. In practice, this means that the solution to gun violence require a shift in our collective thinking and our perspective. Like growing research proves that the most effective way to tackle gun violence is to stop thinking of gun control as just law enforcement alone.
According to Joseph, if criminal violence is a viral culture, then those who take a stand against it must fight fire with water, using any social, cultural, and economic means necessary to push back against what are essentially a matrix of imported negative ideas.
There are no magic solution. There are many solutions. So think of it as anything. There are many solutions, many areas of intervention. This requires a multi-sectorial approach. But we have to be careful. This does not mean that we should take funding from law enforcement.
And while social partners, including the churches, the private sector, non-governmental organizations, and families, need to play an active part in pushing back against the culture of violence in their neck of the woods, there still needs to be firm action taken against the hardcore criminal element who are infecting the youth with the region-wide epidemic.
Greater effort needs to be placed on identifying individuals at risk. Early intervention with high-risk individuals are a proven strategy. We need also to strengthen our criminal justice system and start targeting and incapacitating the minority chronic violent offenders. The reality is, in any country, there are not many persons that commit crime. It's a small minority of any population, and that's proven statistically.
However, the glorification of violence can be as hard to curb as the violence itself. Crime is a valuable political football, and there is an irresistible temptation for opposition parties to employ the issue to pave their path to power.
This is not unique. As Adam said, we're not comforting ourselves. But I was very pleased to know that St. Lucia is very, very much advanced. And I'm not going to compare to other countries, so don't ask me. St. Lucia is very much advanced in what we're doing here as it relates to the abatement of crime and violence. I was very pleased to hear what we've been doing here. But we have a lot more to do, and we continue to do a lot more. But I'm very concerned about the glorification of crime in certain sectors for political reasons. The opposition always seems to be happy when things do not go right as far as crime is concerned. There seems to be a joy, instead of condemning criminality and saying to criminals that they're on the wrong path.
Violence is traumatizing to those on its periphery, but it is also very alluring and appealing when presented artfully. It has the power to seduce impressionable minds and change behavior for the worse. The culture of violence is an international agent of negative change, and now the region's nations are waking up to the fact that they need an international collective force of attraction to combat it. For Choice News Now, I'm Jason Seaflay.